A woman's place is in the kitchen. They laughed until she silenced them all. Jessica Miller wiped the sweat from her forehead with the back of her grease-stained hand as she listened to the laughter coming from the other side of the shop. It was always the same thing every single day for the 3 years she'd worked there. "A real woman stays home taking care of the kids," said Chuck, the most senior mechanic in the shop, while the others nodded in agreement. "That's right, Chuck. A woman's place is in the kitchen," added Mike, wiping his oily hands on his blue overalls. Jessica clenched her fists but kept working. She knew any response would only make things worse. At 32, she'd learned that at Central Auto Repair in Hopeville, New York, the best defense was silence and a job well done. "Hey, Jessica," shouted the shop owner, Frank, a heavy-set man in his early 50s. "Come to my office." She set down the wrench and walked to the small office in the back. The walls were covered with calendars of half-naked women and dusty certificates. Frank sat behind a desk piled with messy papers. "Have a seat," he said, pointing to an old chair. "I've got a proposition for you." Jessica sat down, wary. It was never good news when Frank called her into his office. "Listen," he began, shuffling papers. "We've got a car here that's giving everyone a headache. It's already been through Chuck, Mike, Dave. Nobody can figure out what's wrong with it. And you want me to take a look?" Jessica asked, trying not to show her surprise. "That's right. But hear me out. If you can fix this car, I'll stop listening to the guys complaining about having a woman working here. If you can't," he paused dramatically, "then you'll have to accept that maybe it's time to look for another line of work." Jessica's heart raced. This was the chance she'd been waiting for, but it could also be the end of everything. "What kind of car is it?" she asked. "A black 2018 Mercedes. Belongs to Dr. Richard Thompson, owner of Thompson Enterprises. You know who he is, right?" Of course she did. Richard Thompson was the wealthiest businessman in the area, owner of a chain of auto parts stores and several other companies. A man known for only hiring men in important positions. "The car's been sitting here for 2 months, Frank continued. "Richard's getting impatient. If we don't fix it soon, he'll take it to the competition, and we'll lose a big client." Jessica took a deep breath. She knew it was a trap, but it was also her only chance to prove herself. "I'll do it," she said, surprising even herself with the steadiness in her voice. "Great. The car's in the back, covered with a blue tarp, but one thing, you'll work on it only during your regular hours. No paid overtime for now." She nodded and left the office. Her footsteps echoed on the shop's worn concrete floor as she made her way to the back, where the most complicated cars were parked. When she pulled back the blue tarp, Jessica felt a chill in her stomach. The Mercedes looked flawless on the outside, but she knew appearances could be deceiving. She popped the hood, and what she saw made her even more uneasy. The engine was a mess. Loose parts, disconnected wires, everything pointed to multiple failed attempts by others. "So, Princess, gonna fix what the men couldn't?" Chuck's voice dripped with sarcasm behind her. Jessica didn't turn around. She kept examining the engine carefully. "Leave her alone, Chuck," said Dave, a younger mechanic who had always treated her with more respect. "Everyone has the right to try." "Trying is one thing," replied Mike, stepping closer. "The question is succeeding." For the next 2 hours, Jessica examined every inch of the engine. She took notes in an old notebook she always carried in her pocket. There was something odd there, something the others had missed. The problem wasn't in the obvious parts. The engine started, but made a strange noise and lost power after a few minutes. All the diagnostics pointed to the injection system, but Jessica suspected there was more to it. When her shift ended, she went home deep in thought. She lived in a small house in the same neighborhood with her mother, Dorothy, a 70-year-old woman who had raised 3 children alone after her husband abandoned them. "How was work today, dear?" asked Dorothy, who was in the kitchen preparing dinner. "Tough, Mom, but things might get better," replied Jessica, washing her hands at the kitchen sink. Dorothy was a petite woman with graying hair, always tied in a bun. She had worked her whole life as a housekeeper to support her children. She was the one who had taught Jessica that a woman had to be twice as good as a man to be recognized. "Do you remember what I always told you?" her mother said, serving Jessica's plate. "That we have to prove our worth every day," Jessica answered, sitting at the small kitchen table. "Exactly. And you have worth, dear. Never forget that. After dinner, Jessica stayed up late, studying mechanic manuals in English and Portuguese. She had an entire library of technical books she'd collected over the years. Her passion for engines had started as a child, helping a neighbor in his garage. The next day, she arrived early at the shop. She wanted time to examine the car before her co-workers showed up and started with the jokes. When she lifted the hood of the Mercedes again, something caught her eye. There was a small vacuum hose that was connected but not in the right place. It was a subtle mistake, almost unnoticeable, but it could explain exactly the symptoms the car was having. "Interesting," she murmured to herself. "What's interesting?" a young voice asked behind her. Jessica turned and saw a girl about 16, with brown hair in a ponytail and expensive clothes. She had curious eyes and a shy smile. "You shouldn't be here," said Jessica. "It's dangerous for people who don't work at the shop." "I know, but I was curious. I've never seen a woman mechanic before." "And you are?" "Emily. Emily Thompson." The last name made Jessica pause. Thompson, the car owner's daughter. "Does your father know you're here?" "Of course not," Emily replied, shrugging. "He'd be furious. He always says a shop is no place for a woman." Jessica smiled wryly. Apparently, the prejudice ran in the family. "So what are you doing here?" "I wanted to see his car and—" Emily hesitated. "I wanted to see what it's like to work with cars. I've always been curious, but my dad never lets me near the garage at home." There was something in the girl's voice that struck Jessica. The same frustration she'd felt when she was younger, when everyone told her she should choose a more feminine profession. "Want to take a look?" Jessica asked, surprising herself. Emily's eyes lit up. "Really? Can I?" "You can, but stay right there and don't touch anything." Jessica began explaining what she was seeing, using simple terms. Emily asked smart questions and paid attention to every detail. "Why is this little hose here?" Emily asked, pointing to the spot Jessica had noticed. "That's an excellent question," said Jessica. "It should be connected here, see? Someone must have disconnected it for a repair and put it back in the wrong spot." "And that causes problems?" "It can cause several problems: loss of power, high fuel consumption, rough engine." "Wow, such a tiny thing can cause all that." "Absolutely. Sometimes the most complicated problem has the simplest solution." Just then, Chuck arrived at the shop and saw the two talking. "Hey, Jessica, what's this about chatting with customers during work?" Emily startled and took a step back. "I'm not in the way," she said, her voice quieter. "Of course you are, girl. This is a workplace, not a chat room," Chuck said authoritatively. "She was just curious about mechanics," Jessica defended. "Curious?" Chuck let out a laugh. "Like mother, like daughter, women only get in the way." Emily's face turned red with embarrassment, and she ran out of the shop. Jessica felt a surge of anger but kept her cool. "That wasn't necessary, Chuck. Listen here, Jessica. You've got your own mess to deal with. No need to fill a customer's daughter with nonsense." The rest of the morning was tense. Jessica worked in silence, testing her theory about the disconnected hose. When she was finally sure she'd found at least part of the problem, Frank showed up with a worried look. "Jessica, I need to talk to you." She followed him to the office again. "Richard Thompson just called. He's furious. Said his daughter came home saying one of our employees was tampering with his car unsupervised." Jessica's heart sank. "I can explain." No need to explain. He's on his way here and wants to speak to whoever's responsible for the car in person." "But I found the problem, or at least part of it." "You'd better be sure, because if you're wrong, you're out of here today." Jessica returned to the car with trembling hands. She was certain the hose was part of the issue, but she knew in mechanics things were never that simple. There could be other complications. Half an hour later, a black Audi pulled up in front of the shop. Richard Thompson stepped out with a scowl. He was a tall man in his 50s with neatly trimmed grey hair and expensive clothes. He carried himself like someone used to being obeyed. "Where's the person responsible for my car?" he demanded loudly, bringing the whole shop to a halt. Frank hurried over. "Mr. Thompson, welcome. I'm the owner, Frank Johnson. I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to the person who was messing with my car without authorization." Jessica took a deep breath and stepped forward, wiping her hands on her coveralls. "That was me, sir." Richard looked her up and down with disdain. You? A woman? Yes, sir. I'm a mechanic here. A mechanic? He let out a dry laugh. Who had the bright idea to put a woman on my car? Frank stepped in. Mr. Thompson, that was my call. The other mechanics had already tried and you thought a woman could do what experienced men couldn't. Richard cut him off. That's ridiculous. Jessica felt her blood boil but kept her voice steady. Sir, I found the issue with your car. Oh, really? Richard crossed his arms. And what would that be? The vacuum system has an incorrect connection. One of the hoses was reconnected to the wrong spot during a previous repair. Vacuum system? Richard raised an eyebrow. And you're sure about that? I am, sir. I can show you. Richard glanced at Frank, who motioned for Jessica to proceed. All the mechanics in the shop gathered to watch. Jessica popped the hood and pointed to the hose. See this hose here? It should be connected to this point, not that one over there. The wrong connection is causing a vacuum leak, which affects the injection system and causes all the symptoms the car is showing. Richard stepped closer and examined the spot she pointed to. That's it? A little hose? Sometimes the most complex problems have simple solutions, sir. And you're sure that's all it is? Jessica hesitated. She wasn't absolutely certain, but she was confident. I'm pretty sure, sir. Pretty sure isn't sure, Richard said, irritated. Either you're sure or you're not. I'm sure this is one of the problems. There might be others. Richard turned to Frank. Frank, I don't have time for experiments. I want experienced professionals working on my car, not amateurs guessing at the problem. Mr. Thompson, she's good at what she does. Her. Good. Richard looked at Jessica with disdain again. Listen here, miss. I've been running companies for 20 years. I have hundreds of employees, all competent men. I've never hired a woman for a technical position because I know you don't have what it takes for this kind of work. The silence in the shop was uncomfortable. Jessica felt everyone's eyes on her. And another thing, Richard continued. I heard you were filling my daughter's head with your ideas. That won't happen again. Sir, I only explained how an engine works. Your daughter showed genuine interest. My daughter is impressionable, and you took advantage of that to fill her head with nonsense about women doing men's work. But sir, no buts. Richard raised his voice. Frank, I want my car fixed by a real professional, not by this amateur. Jessica felt tears burning her eyes, but fought not to cry in front of everyone. Mr. Thompson, Frank said, clearly uncomfortable. Jessica is one of the best I have. If she says she found the problem, Frank, do you want to lose my business because I can take my cars somewhere else? No, sir, of course not. Then get this woman away from my car and put someone competent on it. Richard stormed out of the shop, slamming the door. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Frank turned to Jessica with a pained expression. I'm sorry, Jessica. You'll work on other cars for now. Chuck will take the Mercedes. Chuck walked over with a smug smile. Leave it to me, boss. I'll have this fixed in no time. But I already know at least part of the problem, Jessica protested. Doesn't matter, Frank said. Customers' orders. Jessica stepped away from the Mercedes with a heavy heart. She'd found the problem, she was sure of it, but no one would give her the chance to prove it. Over the next few days, she watched Chuck and Carl work on the car. They completely ignored the disconnected hose and focused on replacing expensive parts, fuel pump, sensors, filters. The car still had the same issue. See, Carl said to Chuck. It wasn't any of what Jessica said. Women just don't get this stuff. Told you, Chuck replied. They think they know, but when it comes down to it. Jessica heard everything and bit her tongue. She knew she was right, but no one would listen. A week later, during lunch break, Emily showed up at the shop again. This time she was more timid, looking around nervously. Hi, she whispered to Jessica. Hi, Emily. You shouldn't be here. Your dad was really mad last time. I know, but I wanted to apologize. It's my fault you got in trouble. Jessica stopped eating her sandwich and sat beside the girl on the wooden bench in the back of the shop. It's not your fault. You just asked normal questions. But my dad was furious with me. He said I couldn't come here anymore, and that a woman who meddles in men's business only hurts herself. And do you agree with him? Emily shook her head. No, I think he's wrong. You seem to understand way more than some of the men who work here. Thank you for the trust. Jessica, can I ask you something? Go ahead. How did you manage to learn all this? My dad always says it's really hard for women to understand engines. Jessica smiled sadly. It's no harder than it is for anyone, Emily. It's just that we don't get the same opportunities. I studied a lot, read books, practiced constantly, but I always had to prove I was capable, over and over. And is it worth it? I love what I do, and I think everyone should be able to work in something they enjoy, whether they're a man or a woman. Emily grew thoughtful for a few minutes. Jessica, do you think my dad will ever let me study mechanics? I don't know, Emily, but maybe if he sees that women can be good at this. How? Well, if I could prove I can fix his car. But you're not working on it anymore. No, but I still think I know what's wrong. Emily stood up excitedly. Then why don't you show him? Because your dad doesn't want me touching the car. But if you're right... Emily, it's not that simple. The girl fell silent, clearly thinking about something. Jessica, can you teach me about mechanics? What do you mean? In my free time after school, I'll pay for the lessons. Jessica was surprised. Emily, I can't. Your dad made it clear he doesn't want me around you. He doesn't have to know. We could meet somewhere else. No, Emily. It would cause too much trouble. The girl left disappointed, but Jessica knew she'd made the right choice. She already had enough problems. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. The following week, things got worse. Chuck and Mike couldn't figure out the issue with the Mercedes and were getting frustrated. They started spreading rumors that Jessica had sabotaged the car before leaving. I bet she messed with the car so we couldn't fix it, Mike told the other mechanics during their break. Wouldn't surprise me, Chuck agreed. Women can be vindictive like that. You're talking nonsense, said Dave, the youngest mechanic. Jessica wouldn't do something like that. You're new here, Dave, Chuck shot back. You don't know how women are yet. Jessica heard everything from a distance and felt anger, but also sadness. She was being accused of something she'd never do. The situation got even worse when Frank called her into his office again. Jessica, I need to cut your hours. Starting next week, you'll only work part-time. Why? I haven't done anything wrong. I know, but the guys are complaining a lot. They say you're disrupting the work environment. Disrupting how? I do my job and mind my own business. Look, Jessica, you're good at what you do, but sometimes it's better to avoid trouble. If you only worked mornings, you'd have less contact with the others. And how am I supposed to pay my bills with half a paycheck? You could find another job in the afternoons. Jessica left the office devastated. Half a paycheck would barely cover the house expenses and her mother's care. At home, Dorothy noticed her daughter wasn't herself. Did something happen at work? Jessica told her everything. The car, the prejudiced businessman, the reduced hours. Mom, I'm thinking of quitting. Maybe they're right. Maybe women really aren't cut out for this. Dorothy sat beside her daughter at the kitchen table. Honey, do you remember when you were little and used to stay in Jimmy's garage watching him fix cars? I do. Do you remember what he always said? That I had a knack for it. And he was right. You've always understood engines better than most. The problem isn't you, Jessica. The problem is them not wanting to accept that a woman can be better. But it's so exhausting, Mom, having to prove the same thing every day. I know, sweetheart. I spent my whole life proving a woman can raise 3 kids alone, can do hard work, can be strong. And look where we are. Dorothy pointed around the simple but tidy and clean house. We don't have much, but we have dignity. And you have a gift, Jessica. Don't let them take that from you. That night, Jessica lay awake thinking. The next day, she decided to do something she'd never done before, seek out Carl Wilson, an old mechanic who had been her mentor when she was starting out. Carl was 68 and had been retired for 5 years. He lived in a small house in the next neighborhood, where he had a garage he used to do small repairs for neighbors. "Jessica!" "What a nice surprise," he said, opening the door. Come in, come in." The house smelled like coffee and motor oil. Carl had always been a mix of grandfather and teacher to her. "How are things at Frank's shop?" Jessica told him the whole situation. Carl listened quietly, nodding occasionally. "You know what I think, Jessica?" "What?" "I think you're at the wrong shop." "What do you mean?" "Look, I've known Frank for years. He's not a bad man, but he's weak, lets his employees walk all over him, and that Chuck has always been a sexist jerk. But it's the job I have. For now. But let me tell you something. I knew Richard Thompson when he was just a kid working in his dad's shop. Old man Thompson was a good guy, but the son took after his mother, always been arrogant. And how does that help me? It helps me give you advice. Sometimes to change things, we need to take a risky move." "What kind of move?" "You're sure you know what's wrong with the car?" "I am." "Then prove it." "How?" "They won't let me near it." "Jessica, you're only working part-time now, right?" "Yeah." "And they stay at the shop until when?" "Until 5 in the evening." "And you finish when?" "Noon." Carl smiled. "So you have the afternoon free." Jessica understood where he was going. "Carl, I can't do that. If they catch me, I'll be fired on the spot." "What's the difference? The way things are going, you'll end up leaving anyway. At least this way you prove your point." "What if I'm wrong about the car?" "What if you're right?" Jessica fell silent, thinking. "Look, I'm not telling you to do anything wrong," Carl continued. "I'm just saying sometimes we need to be brave to change things. What if it backfires? If it does, you come work with me here in the garage. It doesn't pay much, but at least you won't have to put up with disrespect." Jessica went home even more confused. The idea of working on the car in secret was tempting but risky. Over the next few days, she observed the shop's routine. Everyone left by 5 in the evening, except the night guard, who arrived at 6. There was a 1-hour window when the shop was empty. On Thursday afternoon, she made her decision. She waited until 5:15, then returned to the shop. She had a key because she sometimes needed to pick up tools on weekends. The Mercedes was still in the same spot, with the same problem. Chuck had replaced more parts but kept ignoring the vacuum hose. Jessica worked quickly. She disconnected the hose from the wrong spot and reconnected it to the right one. It was a 5-minute job, but it could solve the whole problem. When she finished, she started the engine. The roar sounded different, smoother. She revved it a few times, and the engine responded well. It was working. She quickly turned off the engine and closed the hood. She left the shop with her heart racing, but also with a sense of victory. On Friday morning, she arrived at the shop trying to act normal. Chuck and Mike were working on other cars. Around 10 in the morning, Chuck went to test the Mercedes again. Jessica watched from a distance as he started the engine. "Damn," Chuck yelled. "The car's working." Mike ran over to see. "Working how?" "It's running fine. No more misfiring." Frank came out of the office. "What do you mean it's working?" "No idea, boss. Yesterday it was still acting up. Today it's fine." "Sometimes that happens," Mike said. "Engines are like people. They have bad days." Jessica almost laughed. They really believed the car had fixed itself. "Well, then call Dr. Richard and let him know the car's ready," Frank said. An hour later, Richard arrived at the shop. He looked skeptical. "So you managed to fix it?" "We did, Dr. Richard," Chuck said proudly. "Just a matter of persistence." "And what was the problem again?" Chuck stammered. It was the injection system. Really tricky." "Injection system?" Richard raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, we had to replace a few parts. Fuel pump, sensors." Richard started the engine and tested the car. It was running perfectly. "Good job," he said, handing an envelope to Frank. "Lope, here's the payment." After Richard left, Chuck and Mike celebrated as if they'd won the lottery. "We nailed it, huh, Mike?" "We sure did. That Jessica would have messed everything up if she kept fiddling." Jessica heard everything in silence. On one hand, she was happy the car was fixed. On the other, she was furious seeing others take credit for her work. At lunch, Emily showed up again. "Hi, Jessica. I heard they fixed my dad's car. I heard that too. But you don't seem too happy. Jessica looked around to make sure no one was listening. Emily, can I tell you a secret? Sure. I was the one who fixed the car. What do you mean? Jessica told her the whole story. Emily listened with widening eyes. You really did that? Came back here in secret? I did. And I was right about the problem. That's amazing. You have to tell my dad. I can't, Emily. He'll never believe me. And even if he did, I broke into the shop without permission. But that's unfair. You did the work and they took the credit. That's life, Emily. The girl thought for a few minutes. Jessica, can you show me what you did? What do you mean? I want to see where the problem was. I want to understand. Jessica looked around. It was lunchtime and the shop was nearly empty. Come here. They walked over to the Mercedes. Jessica popped the hood and pointed to the hose. See this little hose here? It was connected over there. I moved it here. And that fixed it? That's all. Wow, such a small thing. Yep. But it makes all the difference. Emily was examining everything carefully when Chuck appeared. Hey, Jessica, what's this now? Didn't I tell you not to chat with customers? We're not bothering anyone, Jessica replied. Of course you are. And messing with the car I just fixed. I'm not messing with anything, just showing how it works. Showing? You don't even know what to show. If you did, you'd have fixed the car when you had the chance. Emily got angry. She does know. She explained exactly what the problem was and... Emily! Jessica tried to stop her. And she was the one who fixed the car, Emily finished. Chuck let out a sarcastic laugh. Her? Did she fix it? Girl, you're dreaming. It was me and Mike who fixed this car. No, it wasn't. It was Jessica. She told me everything. Oh, really? And how did she fix it, huh? Emily looked at Jessica, who subtly shook her head, asking her to stop. She knew what the problem was from the start. Knowing and fixing are two different things, kid. At that moment, Mike and Frank walked over, drawn by the argument. What's all this noise? Asked Frank. The girl here is saying Jessica fixed Mercedes' car, explained Chuck, still laughing. It's true, insisted Emily. She showed me exactly where the problem was. Frank looked at Jessica. Jessica, what's this about? I just explained to her what I thought the problem was, that's all. Oh, I see. You thought it was one thing, but it was actually another, said Frank. That's why experience matters. It wasn't something else, Emily shouted, frustrated. It was exactly what she said. The little hose was in the wrong place. Chuck stopped laughing. What little hose? This one, Emily pointed to the vacuum hose. She said it was connected wrong, and you guys didn't notice. Mike stepped closer and examined the spot Emily indicated. Wait, this hose is connected here now, but I remember it was over there before. Of course it was there, Chuck said quickly. We moved it during the repair. Moved it when? Asked Mike. I don't remember us touching that. An awkward silence fell. Jessica saw things were getting complicated. Guys, it doesn't matter, she said. The important thing is the car is running. It does matter, said Emily. My dad needs to know who really fixed his car. Listen, kid, Chuck snapped. You don't understand any of this. I understand more than you think, Emily shot back, and I know when someone's lying. The argument was interrupted by Richard's arrival. He'd returned to grab some documents he'd left in the car. What's all this noise? He asked, seeing everyone gathered around his car. Dad! Emily ran to him. I need to tell you something important. Emily, what are you doing here again? I told you not to... Dad, listen, it was Jessica who fixed your car, not them. Richard looked around, confused. What do you mean? Jessica knew what the problem was from the start, but you wouldn't let her work on the car. The other mechanics kept trying and couldn't fix it, so she came back secretly and fixed it. Emily, stop talking nonsense, Richard said, clearly angry. It's not nonsense, it's true. She showed me exactly what was wrong. Richard glared at Jessica. You came back without permission to mess with my car? Jessica knew there was no hiding it now. Yes, sir, I did. That's trespassing. I could sue you. You could, sir, but I just wanted to prove I was right about the problem. And you admit you tampered with my car without permission? I admit it. Frank stepped forward, clearly nervous. Mr. Thompson, I had no idea about this. I'll fire her right now. No, Dad, Emily yelled. You can't fire her. She saved your car. Emily, shut your mouth. You don't understand how serious this is. I do understand. I understand you're prejudiced and can't accept that a woman is a better mechanic than these men. Richard's face turned red with anger. How dare you speak to me like that? Because it's the truth. You always say women aren't cut out for this, but she proved you wrong. She proved she's a criminal. She trespassed. She proved she's competent, Emily shouted back. Father and daughter stared at each other in tense silence. Jessica saw that she had caused a family fight and felt terrible. Mr. Richard, she said, I take full responsibility for what I did. I don't want to cause problems between you and your daughter. You've already caused enough problems, Richard replied coldly. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. Dad, please, said Emily, tears in her eyes. Just hear her out. There's nothing to hear. Frank, fire this woman now. Yes, sir, replied Frank. Jessica, you're fired. Jessica shook her head, gathered her personal tools, and headed for the exit. Emily ran after her. Jessica, wait. No, Emily. I've already caused too much trouble for you and your family. You didn't cause any trouble. My dad's just stubborn. Emily, go back to your dad, and thank you for trying to defend me. Jessica left the auto shop for the last time carrying her toolbox. She felt devastated, but there was also a strange sense of relief. At home, she told Dorothy everything. Honey, you did the right thing. Did I? I lost my job, Mom. You proved your point, and that's worth more than any job. But how are we going to pay the bills? We'll figure it out, we always do. That evening, Jessica was in the kitchen doing calculations when someone knocked on the door. It was almost 9 at night. Who could it be at this hour? Dorothy asked. Jessica went to the door and was surprised to see Emily on the other side. Emily, what are you doing here? And at this time? I ran away from home, the girl replied, her eyes red from crying. What do you mean, ran away? I had a huge fight with my dad. He forbade me from leaving the house and said I can never talk about mechanics again. Emily, you can't run away from home. Your parents must be worried. My dad isn't worried. He's furious. He said I'm ungrateful and don't understand anything about life. Dorothy appeared at the door. Who's this, Jessica? Mom, this is Emily, the daughter of the car owner I worked for. Oh, the prejudiced man's daughter? That's right. Come in, dear. You must be cold. Emily stepped inside and sat at the kitchen table. Dorothy poured her a glass of warm milk. Emily, you need to go back home, Jessica said. Your parents must be frantic. I don't want to go back. My dad will never listen to me. But running away doesn't solve anything. Then what does? Staying quiet while he treats you and other women like they're inferior? Dorothy sat at the table. Sweetheart, can I give you some advice? Sure. I raised 3 kids on my own, 2 boys and a girl. Know what difference I made between them? What? None. I taught them all to be respectful, hard-working and honest, and that anyone could be whatever they wanted to be. But my dad doesn't think like that. Parents are sometimes wrong, dear, but we don't change them by running away. We change them by proving we were right. How? By being who we want to be, no matter what they say. Emily grew thoughtful. But how can I be a mechanic if my dad won't let me? First, you finish school, Jessica said. Then, when you're old enough, you make your own choices. And until then? Until then, you study on your own. Read books, watch videos, learn everything you can. Will you teach me? Jessica looked at Dorothy, who nodded in agreement. Yes, I will. But first, you have to go home and make things right with your parents. They won't let me come here. Then we'll meet somewhere else, Saturday mornings at Carl's auto shop. Really? Really? But only if you go home now, Emily agreed. Jessica walked her home, which was in the fanciest part of town. The house was large, with a garden and an electronic gate. Richard was at the door, clearly desperate. When he saw Emily arriving with Jessica, his expression shifted from relief to anger. Where were you? He shouted. Dad, And you? He turned to Jessica. What are you doing with my daughter? She showed up at my place, sir. I brought her back. Showed up at your place? How did she know where you live? I asked around, Emily said. I wanted to talk to her. Talk about what? About what happened today, about how you were unfair to her. Emily, get inside, now. Dad, you need to listen. I said get inside. Emily looked at Jessica sadly and went into the house. Richard turned back to Jessica. Listen here. I don't want you anywhere near my daughter ever again. Understood? Understood, sir. If I find out you're filling her head with your ideas, I'll sue you for influencing a minor. Sir, I only brought her back home. And make sure it's the last time. Richard went inside and slammed the door. Jessica walked home thinking about how the situation had gotten so complicated. In the following days, she started looking for a job. She visited several auto shops, but the answer was always the same. They didn't hire women for mechanic work. After a week of unsuccessful searching, she decided to accept Carl's offer to work at his small garage. The pay was low, but at least it was a fresh start. Don't worry, Jessica, Carl said. We'll grow together here. Carl's garage was small and simple but cozy. He mostly helped neighbors with minor car troubles, but the work was honest. On her first Saturday working there, Jessica was organizing the tools when Emily showed up. How did you find me here? Jessica asked, surprised. I asked Carl yesterday when he went to buy parts at my dad's store. Your family owns an auto parts store. Yes, my dad has several shops in town. And he let you come here? He doesn't know. I told him I was meeting a friend from school. Emily spent the morning learning basic mechanics. She was a dedicated student and asked smart questions. Carl liked her too. That girl's got a knack for this, he told Jessica. Reminds me of you when you were young. Over the next few weeks, Emily kept coming on Saturdays. She was improving quickly and could already handle small repairs on her own. One day, she arrived at the garage, visibly upset. Did something happen? Jessica asked. My dad found out I've been coming here. How? My friend's mom called yesterday asking why I wasn't at her party. So he figured out I'd lied about where I was going on Saturdays. What did he say? That I can't go out alone on Saturdays anymore. And if he finds out I'm talking to you, he'll send me to boarding school. Jessica sighed. She knew this would happen sooner or later. Emily, maybe it's best if you stop coming here for a while. No, I don't want to stop learning. But I can't be responsible for causing problems between you and your family. You're not causing problems, my dad's just stubborn. Maybe so, but he's still your dad. Emily was quiet for a few minutes. Jessica, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think I'll ever get to be a mechanic someday? I think you can be whatever you want, Emily, but you might have to wait until you're older. What if I forget everything I've learned by then? You won't forget, and when the time comes, you can learn even more. Emily left the garage sad, and Jessica's heart ached. She enjoyed teaching the girl and saw in her the same passion for mechanics she'd felt when she was young. Several weeks passed without Emily showing up. Jessica assumed her father had managed to control her. Life at Mike's garage was peaceful, but she missed the hustle and bustle of a bigger repair shop. One day at the end of October, Mike arrived at the garage with a worried expression. Jessica, I need to tell you something. What is it? I ran into Frank at the bar yesterday. He was drinking and we talked a bit. And? He told me Richard's Mercedes started acting up again. Really? Really? Seems the car ran fine for a few weeks, but then the same issues came back. Jessica was confused. She was sure she'd fixed the problem correctly. What did they do? They took the car to a Mercedes specialist. The diagnostic cost over $1,000. Did they figure it out? They found two issues. One was the hose you fixed. The other was a faulty sensor. Oh, I see. That's why the car acted up again. Exactly. You fixed half the problem, but there was something else no one noticed. And now? Now Richard's furious because he spent a fortune at the specialist, and Frank's desperate because he might lose the client. Jessica felt awful. If she'd had the chance for a full diagnostic, maybe she'd have caught the second issue too. Mike, do you think I should have spotted the bad sensor? Jessica, You worked on that car in secret, in a hurry, just fixing the obvious problem. It's normal you missed something subtler. But now they'll think I didn't know what I was doing. They already thought that before, didn't they? The next day, Jessica was working on a Beetle when a luxury car pulled up in front of the garage. To her surprise, it was Richard. He stepped out with a stern look and walked over to her. "We need to talk." Jessica wiped her hands on a rag and approached. "Sir, do you know why I'm here?" "No, sir. My car started having problems again." "I heard." "I'm sorry." "You're sorry?" Richard raised an eyebrow. "You tampered with my car without permission and didn't fix it right." "Sir, I fixed the issue I identified. I didn't know there was another." "Of course you didn't. That's why amateurs shouldn't touch expensive cars." Jessica felt anger but held it back. "You're right. I shouldn't have touched your car without permission." "No, you shouldn't. And now I'm suing you for damages." "Damages? How?" "The specialist said some parts replaced during earlier repairs weren't necessary. That caused nearly $3,000 in wasted expenses." "But sir, I didn't replace any parts. I just reconnected a hose." "But you started this whole mess. If you hadn't touched it, the specialist would have been called from the start." Jessica realized Richard was looking for someone to blame for his financial loss. "Sir, I understand your frustration, but no buts. You'll cover the damages or I'll take legal action." "Sir, I don't have $3,000. "Then figure it out." Richard left the garage, leaving Jessica panicked. $3,000 was more than she made in 6 months. Mike, who'd heard everything, walked over. "What a petty man." "Mike, what do? I don't have that kind of money." "Calm down, Jessica. Let's think this through." "He's going to sue me." "He can sue, but that doesn't mean he'll win. You didn't cause any damage. In fact, you fixed part of the problem. But I went into the shop without permission. That's a separate issue. But you didn't harm the car." That night, Jessica barely slept. The thought of being sued terrified her. The next day, she decided to find a lawyer to understand her situation better. The lawyer, Dr. Robert, reassured her a little. "Jessica, from what you've told me, he has no legal grounds for a damages lawsuit. You didn't break or damage anything in the car." "But what about breaking into the shop? That's more complicated. Technically, you committed a violation, even though you had a key. But considering you were an employee and your intention was to make a repair, not steal, a judge would likely be lenient. What if he actually sues? Then we defend ourselves, but I think he's just trying to intimidate you." Jessica left the lawyer's office feeling a bit calmer, but still worried. A week later, the situation took an unexpected turn. Emily showed up at the garage with a determined look. "Jessica, I need to tell you something important." "Emily, you can't be here. Your father—" "My father doesn't know, and what I have to tell you is about him." "What do you mean?" "I found out why his car had problems again." "How so?" "I overheard him talking to my mom. The issue didn't come back on its own." "I don't understand." "After you fixed the hose, the car ran perfectly for a month. Then one day my dad decided to make an upgrade to the engine." "What kind of upgrade?" "He installed a performance chip without consulting anyone, said he wanted the car to be more powerful." Jessica's eyes widened. "A performance chip? That can cause all sorts of problems." "Exactly, and that's what damaged the sensor. The chip pushed the engine beyond its limit and burned it out." "Emily, are you sure about this?" "I am. I heard him complaining to my mom that the chip didn't work as he'd hoped and that he was going to remove it." "And did he?" "He did, but the damage to the sensor was already done." Jessica fell silent, processing the information. "So the real problem wasn't caused by me or the other mechanics. It was caused by your own father." "Exactly. And now he wants you to pay for the problem he created." "Emily, can you prove this?" "I can. I have photos of the chip he removed, and I recorded his conversation with my mom on my phone." "You recorded it?" "I did. I knew it might come in handy someday." Emily played the audio on her phone. It was clearly Richard's voice explaining to his wife how he'd installed and later removed the chip. "Emily, this changes everything. With this proof, your father can't sue me for damages he caused himself." "That's what I hoped. But there's a problem." "What?" If I show this recording, my dad will know I'm helping you, and then he'll really send me to boarding school. Emily, you don't have to sacrifice yourself for me, but I want to help. You taught me that sometimes we have to fight for what's right. Are you sure? I am. Besides, I'm tired of pretending I'm okay with my dad's prejudiced behavior. So, what do you suggest? That we confront him together. If he knows I have proof he caused the problem, maybe he'll drop the lawsuit. What if he gets even angrier? Then at least I'll have tried to do the right thing. That afternoon, Emily called her father and asked him to pick her up from a friend's house. In reality, she was at Carl's garage. When Richard arrived, he found Emily waiting with Jessica. Emily, what are you doing here with this woman again? Dad, I need to show you something very important. I don't want to see anything. Get in the car now. Dad, it's about the problem with your car. What about my car? I know what really caused it. Richard glared at Jessica suspiciously. Did this woman fill your head with lies? It wasn't her, Dad. I figured it out myself. Emily showed her father the photos of the chip. Do you remember this? Richard's face turned pale. How did you get these? I took them when you left the chip on the workbench at home. Emily, this is none of your business. It is my business, Dad, because you're accusing Jessica of causing a problem that you caused yourself. What problem did I cause? The performance chip you installed is what burned out the car's sensor. It wasn't anything she or the other mechanics did. Richard fell silent, clearly uncomfortable. So what? That doesn't change anything. It changes everything, Dad. You can't sue her for a problem you caused. I can sue whoever I want. You can, but you won't win, Emily said, holding up her phone. Because I have the recording of your conversation with Mom where you admit to installing the chip. Richard was shocked. You recorded my conversation? I did. And if you sued Jessica, I'll show this recording to everyone. How dare you blackmail me? It's not blackmail, Dad, it's justice. Father and daughter stared at each other in tense silence. Jessica saw a battle of wills unfolding before her. Emily, Richard said, his voice lower, you don't understand the consequences of what you're doing. I do understand, Dad. I'm doing what's right. And what if I send you to boarding school anyway? Then I'll go, but at least I'll know I did the right thing. Richard turned to Jessica. You're using my daughter against me. Sir, I never asked her to help me. She did this on her own. Because you filled her head with your ideas. What ideas? That women can work in any profession? That competence has no gender? Exactly, those ridiculous ideas. Dad, Emily shouted, how can you call that ridiculous? Jessica is more skilled than half the men working at Thompson Enterprises. Emily, you're a child. You don't understand how the world works. I understand more than you think, and I know the world won't change unless people like me stand up. Richard fell silent for a few minutes, clearly processing everything. Fine, he finally said. I won't sue her. He glanced at Jessica. But I also don't want to hear her name mentioned in my house again. Dad, that's not fair. That's my condition. Either that, or I really will send you to boarding school. Emily looked at Jessica, who gave a subtle nod of agreement. Okay, Dad, I accept. Richard walked to the car, but before getting in, he turned back to Jessica. You may have won this time, but it doesn't change anything. Women still don't belong in men's work. Sir, Jessica said, maybe one day you'll change your mind. Never, Richard replied, stepping into the car. Emily approached Jessica before leaving. I'm sorry about all this. Don't apologize. You were very brave. Thank you for everything you've taught me. Thank you for standing up for me. The two hugged quickly before Emily got into her father's car. In the weeks that followed, Jessica's life returned to normal at Mike's garage. Work was steady, and she was managing to save some money. One day, Mike arrived at the garage with an excited expression. Jessica, I have a proposal for you. What kind of proposal? Do you know Stephen, the owner of Johnson Auto Parts? I know the name. He's opening a new shop, specializing in tough diagnostics. He's looking for skilled mechanics for his team. And I recommended you. Mike, you know I'm a woman, right? They won't hire me. Stephen isn't like the others. His daughter is a mechanical engineer. He doesn't have those prejudices. Are you sure? I am. In fact, he wants to meet you. Scheduled an interview for tomorrow at 2 in the afternoon. Jessica felt both excited and nervous. It was a chance to work on something more challenging, but she was afraid of reliving the Central Auto repair situation. The next day, she dressed up and went to Johnson Auto Parts. Stephen was a man in his 60s, with white hair and a warm smile. "So, you're the Jessica that Mike keeps talking about?" "Yes, sir. He told me about the Mercedes case. Said you spotted a problem that several experienced mechanics missed." "Well, I got lucky." "Lucky nothing. That was skill. Mike showed me the technical details. You know engines." The interview lasted an hour. Stephen asked several technical questions, and Jessica answered them all confidently. "Jessica, I want to make you an offer. How about working at my new shop as a diagnostic specialist?" "Really?" "Really. The pay is good, and you'd have total freedom to work your way. And it's not a problem that I'm a woman." "Problem? For me, it's an advantage. Women are more careful and notice details men sometimes overlook." Jessica accepted the offer on the spot. It was exactly the opportunity she'd been waiting for. The new shop was modern and well-equipped. Jessica was hired along with 3 other mechanics, all men, but they treated her with respect from day one. "It's good to have someone who understands electronics on the team," said Paul, one of the most experienced mechanics. "These new cars are practically computers on wheels." Jessica quickly established herself as the shop's go-to expert for tough problems. Her reputation began spreading through town. 3 months later, on a Saturday morning, she was diagnosing an issue with an imported car when someone knocked on the shop door. To her surprise, it was Emily. "Emily, what are you doing here?" "I came to give you some news," the girl said with a huge smile. "What news?" "My father changed his mind about hiring women." "What do you mean?" "He hired an engineer to oversee one of his stores. And guess why? Why? Because she's Stephen's daughter and he wanted to stay on good terms with the parts supplier." Jessica laughed. Typical of him. There's always a business reason behind it. "Yeah. But the important thing is she's proving to be very capable. So much so that he's considering hiring more women for technical roles." "And how'd you find all this out?" "I overhear his conversations in the home office. And there's more. He told my mom you might not be as incompetent as he thought." "Wow. What a compliment." "For him, that's practically a love confession," Emily said, laughing. The two chatted for a few more minutes. Emily shared that she'd convinced her father to let her take a mechanics course after high school. "He wasn't thrilled, but he agreed," she said. "Said if it's what I want, he won't stop me." "That's great, Emily. I'm happy for you." "And you know what finally convinced him?" "What?" "I told him if women can be engineers and work at his companies, they can be mechanics too." He couldn't argue with that. When Emily left, Jessica reflected on how much had changed. It hadn't been easy, and she'd faced some tough times, but in the end, she'd proven her point. A few months later, Stephen's shop was always packed. Jessica had become the town's go-to for tricky diagnostics. Cars other mechanics couldn't fix ended up in her hands. One day, Stephen called her over. "Jessica, I have a proposal for you." "Another one?" "How about becoming my business partner? You'd own 40% of the shop." "Stephen, I don't have money to invest." "You don't need money. Your skill is worth more than cash. What do you say?" Jessica was moved. It was more than she'd ever dreamed. "I accept," she said without hesitation. On the day the new shop sign, Johnson & Miller Automotive Diagnostics, was unveiled, a crowd gathered to celebrate. Carl was proud, Dorothy was beaming, and even some old colleagues from Central Auto Repair showed up. To everyone's surprise, Richard Thompson also showed up. He approached Jessica with a serious expression. "I came to wish you good luck," he said. "Thank you, sir. And," he hesitated, "I want to apologize for how I treated you." Jessica was stunned. "Sir, I was wrong. You're skilled, and I failed to recognize that at the time. Thank you for acknowledging that, sir. Actually, I have a question for you." "What is it?" "Would you accept a contract to maintain my company's fleet? 50 cars. Jessica smiled. "Of course, sir. It would be a pleasure." When Richard left, Emily approached. "I can't believe my dad did that." "Neither can I." You know what this means? What? That you really managed to change his mind, and if you changed his mind, you can change anyone's. That night at the opening celebration, Jessica gave a short speech. Folks, when I first started working in auto repair, a lot of people said a woman's place was in the kitchen. Today, I've learned that a woman's place is wherever she wants to be. Thank you to everyone who supported me on this journey. Applause filled the shop. Jessica looked around and saw smiling faces, including Emily's, who was beaming. 6 months later, Emily began her auto repair technician course. She interned at Jessica's shop on Saturdays. There were also 2 other young women who had become interested in the profession after seeing Jessica's work. Wow, I never thought I'd see so many women interested in auto repair, Stephen remarked one day. People just needed to see it was possible, Jessica replied. A year after the opening, Johnson & Miller Automotive Diagnostics had become the go-to shop in the area. Jessica had proven that skill knows no gender and that dreams can come true with persistence and courage. Dorothy, now 71, could finally retire completely. She lived proudly for her daughter and always told the neighbors, "My girl proved that a woman can do anything a man can do, and sometimes even better." And when someone asked Jessica what the secret to her success was, she always answered, "Never stop believing in yourself, even when everyone says you can't." The end. Tell us what you thought of this inspiring story. If you know a woman fighting workplace prejudice, share in the comments, give us a like and subscribe to the channel.